Welcome to Sex Ed with DB. I'm your host, DB. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Lalo anatomy lesson you won't want to miss. Ever heard of the A spot, aka the female prostate? It's a deep erogenous zone located on the front wall of the vagina about 2 inches deeper than the G spot. And that's exactly where Lalo's Enigma Double Sonic goes. It simultaneously stimulates your clit, G spot, and A spot using deep sonic tech that literally sends sound waves through your body. When folks ask me about blended stimulation, this is one I point to because it covers all 3 zones. Think a full symphony for the vulva. Want to get the toy loved by millions? Head to lelo.com now and use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off and give your A-spot the standing ovation it deserves. Let me tell you about the most fun homework assignment I have ever given. Daily Magic Wand Time. It started with me doing a 21-day experiment to answer one question. What happens to stress, sleep, mood, and sexual satisfaction when I use the magic wand every day versus when I have partnered sex versus when I have no sexual activity at all? The results were honestly so fascinating that we turned it into a full-blown scientific study with over 1,000 participants. Now we have real data on how consistent solo pleasure can impact mental health and overall wellness, not just orgasms. Curious? Go to magicwandstudy.com and read what we found. Hello. Welcome back to Sex Ed with DB. I'm DB, your favorite sex educator and pleasure expert, and this is DB's Pleasure Preview. Today, we are talking about something that really doesn't get enough credit for how powerful it actually can be for you and not for someone else, and that's lingerie. Because for decades, lingerie has been marketed as something you wear for someone else, something designed for the male gaze, something about seduction, performance, being chosen, looking sexy to someone who's not you. And today we're flipping that whole narrative around. What we wear, how things feel against our skin, how we relate to sensuality has a measurable impact on our confidence, desire, and even our sexual satisfaction. We talk a lot on this show about pleasure being biopsychosocial, meaning it's shaped by our bodies, our minds, and our cultural context. And lingerie sits right at that intersection of all 3. So why this topic and why now? Because we are in a cultural moment where people are reclaiming sensuality as self-expression, where pleasure is becoming less about performance and more about embodiment, specifically for women and queer people with vulvas. And where, frankly, a lot of us are asking, what makes me feel good in my body? Bluebella is a modern lingerie brand reimagining sensuality as power, self-expression, and confidence, and not performance for someone else. And I helped lead Bluebella's Modern Sensuality Community campaign, alongside brilliant researchers Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons, Dr. Shamika Thorpe, and Casey Vigil. In this campaign, Bluebella surveyed 1,500 women around the world about lingerie, pleasure, and their bodies. And they found that the frequency of buying lingerie was directly linked to higher sexual satisfaction. This came right from the people who filled out the survey. Not just in partnered sex, but in solo pleasure too. Women over 50 were some of the most active lingerie shoppers and reporting the highest pleasure satisfaction. And nearly 68% of respondents said they feel most sensual when using or wearing appealing textures like silk sheets or soft clothing. There's a whole bunch of other data points that we go over in this episode. And if you check out the Modern Sensuality campaign link in the show notes, you can read a lot more there. And in this survey, we learned that lingerie wasn't about impressing someone else. It was about texture, sensation, confidence, self-perception. It's about the psychology of feeling powerful in your own skin. So today in this episode, I'm sitting down with Emily Bendell, founder of Bluebella, to talk about how lingerie can be a tool for agency, pleasure, and modern sensuality. We're unpacking the research, the cultural shifts, and what it actually means to dress for yourself. This episode is sponsored by Bluebella, and I believe deeply in this work and in this survey, and I'm so excited that I got to lead this amazing research team to get these incredible, fascinating results. And I'm stoked to share what we found with you. Let's get into it. Emily, welcome to Sex Ed with DB. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
It is my absolute pleasure. You are such a badass, first of all. You are the founder and CEO of a very sexy, incredibly fun lingerie brand, which I have had the utmost pleasure of being able to try. Incredibly hot, incredibly good materials, amazing colors, good feel. I just love your company and love the things you make. So I'm very, very excited that you're here with us today.
Oh, well, thank you. And you are welcome.
I'm honored.
Glad you like.
Yes. We're going to be talking all about the Modern Sensuality Community Campaign today, which I was very, very lucky. Spoiler alert, I was involved in this campaign. I led an amazing research team that essentially helped put together what was a 1,500 person women focused survey all about sensuality and lingerie and pleasure and body image and connection. And that's what we're going to talk about today, the results of this incredible campaign. How do you feel?
Yeah, really excited. I mean, it's all the good stuff, right? I mean, this is how, I wasn't someone who just wanted to work in fashion. I wanted lingerie as a special corner of fashion that connects to all those things: physicality, sensuality, sexuality. It's got so much in there. And this is all the stuff that really sort of motivates me. I was wanting to do this survey for a long time, so I couldn't be happier to talk about it.
Yes. And while we're here, I just want to shout out who that amazing research team is. We had Dr. Candace Nicole Hargons, we had Dr. Shamika Thorpe, and we had Casey Vigil. And I just absolutely love working with these folks. It was such a pleasure to be able to project manage this survey. And it really put together for me all the things that I love about this work, about like honesty and authenticity and women and queer people, and making sure that we are understanding how are people feeling in their bodies and what impacts the way that they're feeling. And we have the results about that for 1,500 women around the world, which is so cool and so fun. So I'm stoked to get into it. But before we do, we got to do the quick and dirty. The quick and dirty is our rapid fire segment where we get to know our expert with bold questions, honest answers, and just enough spice. And here we go. The first question is, I'd love for you to finish this sentence. I feel most sensual when I'm wearing blank.
Okay, I'm split between two answers. Obviously, I want to say Bluebella. I want to say Bluebella lingerie because right. Hello. Right. But actually, I would twist that and say when I'm wearing confidence. What I mean by that is when I'm connected to my body, connected to myself, prioritizing myself. So when I'm wearing that kind of layer of confidence and self-esteem, that's when I feel the most sensual.
Oh, very sexy, because I feel like that could really apply to anything. Like I'm even picturing like a big t-shirt, but if you just got out of the shower and you just like wet combed your hair, like there's so many different ways to approach that. I'm also thinking of the Michael Scott quote from the American version of The Office, where he's like, call me old fashioned, but I think a woman is sexiest when she's wearing nothing at all. It's just so classic. So maybe it's nothing. Maybe, beautiful listener, if you're feeling most sensual when you're wearing absolutely nothing, I'm sure there's many people who also feel that too.
I think it's a feeling, right? That's the thing, isn't it? Because it's when you could be looking, with friends, they say, I feel great today, I feel don't great. And you're like, you look great both days, but it's it's the feeling of how you're feeling at that moment. That's the sensuality and the sexiness. Yeah.
The energy, right? It's like if you're looking in the mirror and you're like, ooh, my skin is glowing. Oh, I feel really smooth and soft. I am like getting the look of my partner. I'm looking at myself in this way. There's like all of these, an amalgamation of feelings that come together to create when you feel most sensual, which I love. What lingerie do you wear to make you feel most powerful?
Oh, what a great question. Gosh, it really depends on the day and the mood. I mean, I've got a very contemporary style, which you can see reflected in Bluebella. And we do a lot with very bold design details like wide strapping, metalwork, cutouts. And that's probably for me, that's the most powerful look because it's really strong. It's really contemporary. It's got that real kind of badass feel to it. So, things like our Suri range or, those very sort of the Aula bodysuit, these kind of strong contemporary styles that we do.
Oh, the bodysuit. We got to link the bodysuit in the show notes. It's incredibly hot. I think for me, when it comes to specifically Bluebella, because I honestly, like before I engaged with Bluebella and like before I met y'all and started doing the survey with you, I like didn't really have much in the lingerie department. So it really opened my eyes personally to all the different forms of lingerie. Like I think when we think about lingerie, we automatically, if we're women, might think, oh, bra and panties. But realistically, it's so much more than that. Like I love the bodysuit. I personally was just flabbergasted at how hot I felt in the long sleeve, kind of like semi see-through, like crystal top. Mm-hmm. We're going to link that in the show notes too. It's like my go-to party outfit now. Like I put a Bluebella bra on under it and it just I feel very confident, powerful, sexy. Like you could tell like when I meet a new person in that outfit, they're like, whoa, cool outfit. Like they want to know where I got it because it's just such a great sexy find.
But that's the thing about lingerie. And this has been part of my mission with Bluebella is that I think traditionally lingerie has inhabited this really weird space that women have thought about it as something that somebody looks at on them. It's that male gaze that, they associate lingerie not with themselves. I mean, we'll get into this in the survey, but traditionally this is how women have thought about this product. So they see it as this kind of either for the male gaze or they see it as something functional, something to make their clothes look good, like smooth lines under clothes. But of course, it shouldn't be any of those things. What you're talking about is exactly how I feel about lingerie. It's a part of fashion. It could be a great styling piece that looks amazing with jeans or a high-waist skirt, or it's you show the strap with your outfit, or you just want to look amazing under your clothes, but it reflects your style. It makes you feel something, just like a new dress or new shoes or a new handbag or purse, as you guys call it, does. So, it's lingerie should be all those things. It should create all those feelings. But so, traditionally that hasn't been what it is, but it is what it should be.
Oh, so good. Such a good reminder about the fashion piece. I feel like as someone who works from home, it's like a very good reminder to not always have to put on sweatpants and just like actually dress up for myself. It can feel like a little bit of a push, but inevitably every time when I do it, even if I just put on like a little bit of eyeliner or like, pay attention a little bit more to how I'm styling my hair, like it really does make a difference in the way I feel about my body and myself.
I know for sure. Absolutely. I mean, I honestly think you wearing great lingerie as a base layer in the morning, you walk straighter, you feel more powerful. It sets a tone for your day. And it really isn't about whether anybody sees it. It's about how you feel in it. And that moment of putting it on in the morning is a sensual moment for you in and of itself. So it really, I'm obviously I'm very passionate about this, but I really believe it gives women that.
Completely. All right. We don't have any time to waste. We got to get into this survey now. I can't wait to tell everyone like what this is about and why we did it and why Bluebella really, aimed to move the needle here. But kind of backing up a little bit, just in terms of your background, right? Like, tell me a little bit about what you were trying to do differently when you entered the lingerie world. Like, what did you see that you wanted to maybe come in and say, I actually want to shift this a little bit with Bluebella? Like, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, my mission was to reframe lingerie from it'd been very binary up until that point, very functional, as I was saying earlier, or sort of this male gaze sexy. And I wanted to, and actually from a feminist perspective, that was deeply problematic to me, because if we were telling young women that the thing they wear closest to their skin is not for them, it's for somebody else, or it's to serve a purpose to make their body look a certain way, then what does that, it's a small leap to then say to them, well, what is your body for? your body's not for you. It's for someone to look at. It's so, there was this sort of feminist viewpoint that I felt really the lingerie industry was working counter to. And what I wanted to do was create beautiful lingerie, fashion-led lingerie, that was really about empowering women, celebrating this duality of women, the strength, the femininity, and really with a brand and aesthetic that was about women wearing this product for themselves and celebrating themselves and showing diversity in our imagery. And, we're known as a campaigning brand. We start conversations. We've broken a lot of firsts in the industry. So, that's why for me, lingerie is such an emotive product. It's such an interesting product. Fashion can seem frivolous, but actually fashion is important in the cultural dial, in how we talk to people. Women wearing trousers for the first time, that was a big cultural moment. It gave freedom. So, I think lingerie inhabits this really interesting space, and I wanted to create a brand that really kind of brought it into a new light.
I really like what you said around, first of all, yes, but I'm stuck also on what you said around strength and femininity. I feel like we rarely hear those two combined unless we're kind of talking about like athletes. Like I feel like in the Olympics or like, in different things like that, which is great. And I'm happy that that exists and that comes to mind. But I do think that to me as a consumer and as a person in the world and someone who like studied film in college and media studies and really cares about these messages that we're getting and what that means, especially with fashion and the way that women are perceived inside of the, societal norms of what we're supposed to be, quote unquote, wearing, you don't really hear those two terms together of strength and femininity. And I do think that when we're talking about confidence, sexiness, feeling like at home in our bodies, that it makes sense, like what you're saying, that the thing that you're wearing closest to your skin, why can't those be associated, and why shouldn't they?
100%, and it's a core part of the brand. I mean, it's reflected in our design as well. We have, a beautiful feminine fabric, a lace or a chiffon, and then we'll have some metalwork or a strapping detail, and we bring that together in the design handwriting. But actually, interestingly, because this is such a kind of heart of what we do, we've actually run a campaign for over 10 years now called Strong is Beautiful. And that campaign, what we do is photograph athletes, world-class athletes. We've done Olympians, Paralympians, footballers, rugby players, strong female bodies wearing our product, because actually you often don't see that. You don't see those strong women
combined
in lingerie. It's like, oh, that's not, the lingerie. And so we wanted to kind of celebrate that strength, talk to that. And, we've run that for over 10 years. The last campaign we did was with the British Olympic rugby team. And that, created a really interesting conversation. In many ways, it also kind of, people judge sportswomen for being in their lingerie in a way they don't judge, David Beckham in his pants for whatever brands. It also highlights a lot of these double standards. But yeah, that strength and femininity piece is really key. Yeah.
Oh God, after this, I'm going to go look at all the videos and content that you have, because I just feel like it's so, it is very sexy. And I feel like this idea specifically, again, like we're recording this when the Olympics are happening, so they're very much on my mind. But I think that seeing female bodies and seeing the strength and how toned they are and how cut and how like, you typically don't then think like, oh, they are soft, they are feminine. That is a body that is wearing this sexy lingerie, unless it's kind of this like fetishized. So I really appreciate the idea of saying like, no, all of these bodies are capable and worthy of wearing something beautiful and feminine and strong and unique. I absolutely love that. Let's talk about solo sex. Masturbation can help reduce stress, improve sleep, and help you figure out what actually feels good for you. One of my go-tos when I'm having me time is Uberlube. It's super smooth, it lasts a long, long time, and it helps every touch feel better, truly. It's also latex compatible, so it's great with condoms, and it even helps reduce chafing for workouts or thigh rub season. Also, here's a very fun fact. Stylists use it as a hair serum flyaway tamer. Pretty cool. Uberlube is a real multitasker. If you're curious and haven't tried it, you should try it for yourself. Use code SEXEDWITHDB for 10% off at uberlube.com and see why Uberlube is my all-time fave. So you've had pleasurable sex. Yay! But then you get a yeast infection. It's painful, itchy, and a sign your vaginal microbiome could use some support.
This is where Happy V comes in. Happy V creates scientifically sound products to support vaginal, gut, and immune health. Their prebiotic and probiotic is formulated with 7 clinically studied probiotic strains at clinically effective dosages, plus a patented prebiotic to help good bacteria thrive. If you want to support your vaginal health from the inside out, head to happyv.com. Use code SEXEDWITHDB for 15% off your first order or up to 30% off when you start a subscription. That's happyv.com. Happyv as in vagina.com.
We're now into the part where we're going to talk about the survey. So I'm so excited. I kind of want to lay out a little bit more about it. It's called the Modern Sensuality Community Campaign. And essentially, the research team set up this beautiful, robust survey. And we ended up surveying 1,500 women about lingerie habits and pleasure and bodies. I guess before we get into the results, why now? Like, why were you so passionate about this idea at this moment? And what were you really trying to understand about how we as women experience sensuality today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a number of different things coming together. I mean, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I still have the experience regularly now where I might go to a party or meet someone new and I tell them what I do. And they say, and these are women who are empowered and cosmopolitan and, and I say, I run Bluebella, and they say, oh, lingerie, I don't have a boyfriend right now. Or they say, oh, I've been married for 20 years. It's not for me. They immediately associate lingerie with someone else. And these are empowered women. So I was like, oh, that's so interesting. How can they be so empowered in every other part of their lives and not this? And so that's always sort of been a question that I've wanted to get underneath. On top of that, as we know, we live in a macro environment where, there's so much progression in one sense with amazing work by people like you and, sex positive campaigners and body positive campaigners and all this amazing work. But equally, a macro environment that actually we're regressing. Women's bodies are being policed more than ever. We're being, told that our place in society and our sort of sensual place is, in a regressive way. And so it felt like it was really time to get underneath and really understand this under-researched area, try and do our own work to understand our community, our audience, their relationship with their bodies, their sensuality, their sexuality. So, and we were, and to echo earlier, and, huge thanks to you and the rest of the team. We had Dr. Candice here in London this week, which was wonderful. We absolutely loved working with you as experts to put it together.
Amazing. Wow. Yeah. I am struck by that. The idea that, that lingerie is for someone else. Like that can't be for me. Which is fascinating. What were some of the questions that we asked in this survey? Like what sticks out to you? If people are wondering like, oh, I would be interested in taking a survey like that. Like what did we ask folks?
So we asked all sorts of things. We were asking, some was quite quantitative, so we were asking about, so we would ask each respondent, things about themselves. So we understood their age and their ethnicity and their, marital status and so on. So we could cut the data. And then we asked them questions about, their desires, their sexual satisfaction, their solo satisfaction, their partnered sex. We asked them about their lingerie buying habits and how they felt about their bodies at different times in their lives. So we really kind of tried to get both, the data piece so we could cross the data, but also understand the qualitative, hear what people were saying. Because, of course, this is such a nuanced subject with very personal experiences. And there were some really beautiful, some of the qualitative, the sort of quotes that have come from it are really, really beautiful. It was such a great experience to have all these women sort of sharing with us these really kind of intimate details about themselves.
Yeah, totally. And what do you think the most interesting findings were? I have a few that I was really fascinated by, but I'm curious to hear your take. What were you surprised by?
mean, there were a few things, but I think the biggest one actually that surprised me was the correlation of age and both sexual and solo pleasure. I think what we are sort of bombarded with is that youth is sexy, sensuality is the preserve of the young, that once you maybe have children, and certainly as you become older, that is less for you. You are not in that world anymore, from advertising. And that's really the message that we get. And the exact opposite is true. The correlation between both solo and partnered pleasure only increases with age. The satisfaction score is a pretty linear line that, it gets, it gets a bit better in your 30s. You have a drop off straight after having children, but then it comes back in your 30s and 40s, and 50 plus is when you're really getting the good stuff. So, that was a really, interesting finding, an important one, and such an optimistic one. When I've spoken to young women about that, it's such a wonderful thing to be able to tell a 25-year-old that it's only getting better.
Completely. I mean, just to break this down even more, right? I do think especially when we look at folks who are even famous and resourced and wealthy, who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, who are women in Hollywood, they even say hey, I have become invisible, right? So imagine the people who are most privileged, most wealthy, most people who are in the spotlight are saying that. Imagine what other folks might feel who are that age, who are very normal people, right? And so I think there is kind of this assumption of well, if I'm older and I already have had my children and I'm quote unquote past my prime, then I'm not going to feel sexy in my body. I'm not going to have great sex with my partner. And like you said, there are many articles that have been coming out, kind of this menopausal boom of, actually, no, when you're in your 50s and 60s, you actually know your body best. You've been in your body as its home for a lot longer than when you're in your 20s and 30s. You have more kind of tendency to love your curves and your stretch marks and your cellulite without, feeling like you have to apologize for it. And so it makes sense to me that maps onto this idea that older people are having better sex and more pleasure. And essentially the quote that I have here is that women aged 50 plus from the survey are the most active lingerie shoppers, with some purchasing monthly, and they report the highest pleasure satisfaction ratings out of the other groups. That to me is a mind blown statistic.
Yeah, for sure. And then that was the other interesting fact, was the lingerie buying correlation to pleasure. That, and it's, which is it chicken? I suppose there's an element of chicken and egg. Is it sort of the lingerie is helping, or you're feeling great, so you're buying the lingerie, but that the frequency of buying lingerie correlated to that pleasure score as well. So I thought that was an interesting finding as well. Yeah.
Which that one really makes sense to me, because having led the 1,000-person masturbation study that we led, just the fact that people in the Magic Wand study had to write down how they were feeling and what they were thinking every day, that kind of behavior begot kind of feeling more in tune with their body and getting more pleasure. So I think it's similar with lingerie habits, where if you're buying more lingerie, you're being more intentional about your pleasure practice potentially. Or like you said, the other way around, if you're more intentional about your pleasure practice, then maybe you're buying more lingerie. But I do think this idea of just being more aware and being more maybe interested in novelty, or thinking about a new fun way to engage in your sexuality or your sensuality, that to me feels like it makes sense why people who buy more lingerie, who are interested in engaging in that novelty, would have higher pleasure scores.
Yeah, that makes it makes perfect sense to me. And I think, it's also about sort of expanding boundaries. I mean, always within your comfort zone, of course, but, even for some people that might just be wearing, they always wear black and they're wearing a colored set of lingerie, or they're wearing a new shape, or they're trying the third piece, or these little elements that give you that excitement or that sort of extra buzz, I think is part of that feeling. That's right. And I think the other interesting finding I would say, which I was really delighted to see, was the reason that women are buying lingerie. So, I was saying earlier about, women's, very empowered women who seem to still think of lingerie for someone else. But in our survey, only 17% of the respondents were buying the lingerie with a partner in mind. So everybody else were buying it for varying reasons of self, whether it was to increase their self-confidence or as an act of self-love or for comfort or whatever other reason, but it was about them. So I was really thrilled to see that. That felt like such, I was really, really, really happy to read that.
Totally. I do think there is an assumption, again, like thinking through, like what are the reasons in our minds that we would buy lingerie? And it's good to know that that male gaze idea is kind of slowly maybe disappearing. And speaking of that, I do think it's great to shout out the queer community who took this survey. In the survey, we found that while straight customers preferred a quarterly cycle of purchasing, queer customers tended to purchase similar to that 50 plus category in monthly cycles. So I think the assumption there is that, if queer people specifically, if we're talking about women who are dating other women or transgender people or non-binary folks, then the idea is that there is no male gaze. Like there's no reason to even talk about the male gaze. So why are queer people doing this? And so the assumption is personal style, celebration of their bodies, and they're reporting much lower scores in wearing that lingerie for romantic occasions. So again, another reason to think about that reframe of lingerie as being something that just makes you feel good because you want to feel good in your own skin and body.
Yeah, 100%, exactly that. And again, that correlates again to the pleasure scores. So, the queer community reported higher pleasure scores than the straight community as well.
Yeah. One other finding that I found really interesting is we asked the question, when do you feel sensual? And we kind of gave, I think I remember multiple choice, because when we were creating the survey, I was kind of maybe this would be too hard for just to fill in the blank. We did offer, I think, the fill in the blank, but gave a bunch of multiple choice options. And a majority of people, 68 almost % answered when using or wearing appealing textures like soft clothing or silk sheets. So what do you make of that answer? What do you make of that stat?
I think it's very, I think what is sensuality, right? For too long we've thought of sensuality as, is it, confused it with sexuality or related it to another person. And sensuality is primarily, not fully, I would say, because I think thoughts can be sensuous, but very related to senses. The smell of a candle, food is very sensuous, taste of something. So, the feeling, touch, that kind of, feeling of a beautiful fabric against the skin, that's a deeply sensual, and that's a fairly universal experience, and that's a deeply sensual experience. So I'm not surprised at that. I think the handle of things is so important. I mean, obviously I work with fabrics, and the feel and the touch is so key. So I'm not surprised by that, but it's not, I think there's something sort of reassuring about having that shared experience as women.
Oh yeah. I'm just thinking about a soft robe and how great that can feel. And even it can make you feel even a little naughty, a little mischievous. I think that awakens our senses also, different ways that we're thinking, I want to be bad, or I want to be, just the way that we can role play even with sensuality is very fun.
Yeah. And I think a lot of women have reported that to me about with the lingerie. Sometimes they'll buy pieces that aren't specifically, not that they're not looking for comfort, but they'll wear things that they can feel under their clothes, because there's an element, that's a different thing to a soft, slinky fabric, which feels soft and caressing. But if you can kind of feel that something you're wearing that is, against you, because it might have a little bit of metal work, or we have a beautiful pearl collection, which is obviously designed to, rub against
so gorgeous.
The skin. So then that's intentional to create that feeling. So it can be lots of different things, but it's really really kind of tying into that touch and sensual experience. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't talk much about this yet. You talked about it briefly, but there were also a number of questions for people who have had kids, and the idea of how their body has changed, the way in which stress, aging, health issues have impacted the body. What did you take from that?
Yeah, that was really interesting. There seemed to be which, I can relate to with my own experience of having children, that having kids in that sort of short aftermath, when your body is suddenly for all these other purposes, and very sort of in demand in a new way, a sort of, other priorities are kind of a bit of not a loss, that sounds negative, but sensuality is not high up on the scale of things that you're focusing on. And so there's this dip. I think there was a brilliant name for it that I think Dr. Candice used, but it's sort of essentially a kind of a dip straight after having children. But then there's this reclamation, this coming back to yourself much more strongly than before you had kids. So there's this moment of coming back to the body. And I think I've seen that myself. It's actually a retailer that we work with here in the UK. And I was trying to understand the customer of that. It's a department store chain here in the UK. And I was like, I'm going to go and kind of hang out near our product on a Saturday and see who's buying it. And this department store is kind of known for having beautiful baby things, and people go and once they get pregnant and they buy the pram or the stroller, as you call it, all the things. And what I noticed was the women coming to buy our lingerie, they'd obviously had the kids, they were in there picking some things up, and they saw our product. And maybe they'd been in the nursing bras, and there was this moment of, this is for me. And this moment of coming back to themselves after having children. And we could really see that in the data. I'd sort of seen it in sort of real life, and that the data really showed that kind of reclamation of self, coming back to their sensuality, but coming back more strongly than before. So those life events, having kids when you're getting no sleep, stress, bereavement, they do have an impact. Of course they do. We don't just sail through them. But the good news is that we can come back stronger.
Oh, so beautiful. I love this so much. One last question, and then we'll tell folks where they can learn more about the results. And if they're a researcher, if they're in the sex education or sexual health field, they can get the data and get the whole thing. I know there are people listening who really loved seeing the Magic Wand data. So I'm sure there are going to be people who are interested in seeing this Modern Sensuality campaign data. Where do you hope to go from here? What is next now that you did this campaign, you learned from these 1,500 women, you did this amazing Valentine's Day campaign, this beautiful, self-love campaign with Bluebella. What comes next? What do you hope for?
I think the first thing to say is how incredibly motivating this survey has been to me and the Bluebella team. We've had team meetings where, we've stood up and read out, of course, anonymized quotes from the survey. Because, sometimes when we might have someone in the business who's spent the day, doing some kind of data spreadsheet, boring operational issue, and you sort of forget what the bigger picture is. And it's reminding the team that this is a product that's really making women feel amazing, that's really sort of doing a great service. And so, first of all, it's been an incredibly kind of motivating experience. So it's sort of pushing us on to great new heights. But in terms of sort of what next, I think it's given us a really strong foundation to understand our customer, or not just our customer, our audience. It's not all customer data, our kind of audience and the women that we speak to. And it's really kind of helped us understand how she connects to her desire. It's given us ideas of the sort of what she wants to see, making, age diversity, looking at, we've got a Modern Sensuality sort of ongoing campaign where we profile very different women talking about their sensuality and what it means to them, and, what moments make them feel sensual. So I think it's a springboard for us to keep having and keep starting interesting conversations, because really my hope is things like this create a ripple effect, that somebody, listens to this podcast and talks to their friend about it, and that empowers her, and she might talk to her daughter about it, and that empowers her. And it's sort of almost passing on this baton of helping us sort of connect to ourselves, to our sensuality, and really sort of empowering us as women.
So beautiful. Yeah, I think that it feels incredible to be able to be a part of this project. I feel very lucky that I was, called upon by Bluebella to help lead this work. It really, really, truly is at the intersection of everything I hold dear and interesting, and very much was excited for this to push me in my career, and for us to be able to communicate with all of these amazing women of, different bodies and different ages and sexualities, and just to learn from people what makes them tick, what excites them, what challenges do they have. And so I'm so thrilled that I got to be a part of this project. So thank you so much, Emily.
Well, we're honored to have had you. That you've been amazing, and so have the rest of the team. So we're very lucky to have had you guys.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And again, shout out to the amazing researchers. We could not have done this at all without you. So thank you, Dr. Candice Nicole Hargons, Dr. Shamika Thorpe, and Casey Vigil, and to the entire Bluebella team. And I'm very excited. We'll put the campaign, the Modern Sensuality campaign, in the show notes so people can look it up. We'll also put a couple links to Bluebella lingerie, some of my favorites, in the show notes. So check those out. And Emily, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to The Afterglow, where we wind things down, reflect on big takeaways, and leave you with one juicy thing to explore before next week. What I loved about this conversation with Emily is how grounded it was in something we sometimes overlook. Sensuality isn't synonymous with sex. It's about sensation. The data from the Modern Sensuality Community Campaign reinforces something I see all the time in my work. Pleasure does not just start in the bedroom. It starts in how we inhabit our bodies. The fact that appealing textures were the most common answer to when do you feel most sensual tells us something important. Sensuality is sensory. It's silk against skin. It's softness. It's smelling something that makes us feel alive. It's touch. It's taste. It's choosing something that makes you stand a little taller and smile at yourself and actually mean it when you look into the mirror. And the link between lingerie purchasing and sexual satisfaction, it's not about consumerism. It's about intentionality. It's about saying my pleasure matters. I'm being intentional about what I'm putting on my body and what I'm putting underneath my clothes. My body is worth adorning. I deserve to feel good, even if no one else sees it, even if it's just for me on purpose. So here is your pleasure practice of the week. What is one small way that you can dress, accessorize, or texture your environment purely for your own sensual experience? Not for a date or a partner, but for you. Maybe it's upgrading your sheets or wearing something under your clothes that makes you feel powerful. Maybe it's noticing how certain fabrics change your posture or your mood or your desire. Pleasure is often built from these tiny sensory moments, and you deserve to have more of them. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure to check out the Modern Sensuality Community Campaign in the show notes if you want to dive deeper into the research and see the kinds of questions that we asked folks and see if your answers would match. And as always, love y'all. Talk to you next week.